Hello, my name is Lorenzo, and I'm joined here with JT. And today we're going to be talking about the cybersecurity market and why I believe it's shaping up to be a promising investment destination in the long term. So first, we will be addressing the overall size of the cybersecurity space and the spike in sophisticated cyber attacks that have driven companies to continuously build up their cyber defense through innovative solutions. Then moving on, we'll open up and discuss on the current position of innovative players and what the edge in the cybersecurity space and what their edge may be in the cybersecurity space and what it can mean for current and future growth. And finally, we will wrap up with the potential and strength of industry leaders in the space that have continued to gain market share through the help of niche cyber solutions. So kind of breaking down major attacks, over the course of a year, the number of ransomware attacks have grown by 150% and are also on track to generate over $20 billion in losses for companies worldwide, with the United States obviously taking the biggest share. Just to break down some of the major attacks, in March of 2020, SolarWinds was the victim of a supply chain ransomware attack that had gained access into several companies and U.S. agencies through the vulnerable Orin platform. The attack overall affected 9 United States government agencies, and Microsoft had also detected malicious software related to the hack on its own network. In addition, 18,000 customers were affected by unknowingly installing malicious updates. Moving on into more recent news, the Colonial Pipeline was the victim of yet another cyber attack that disrupted the demand of oil and gas in over 11 states and also shined the light on the fragility of the network systems for the largest refined oil pipeline in the United States. Similar to SolarWinds, a ransomware payment was needed to be made. In this case, it was $5 million. Following that, less than 2 weeks later, GBS USA Foods was also forced to halt operations after 11 of its meat processing plants were shut down across the United States and Australia. Similar again, a ransomware payment of $1 million of Bitcoin was put to end the hack and return to normal business operations. Then moving on to July 2nd, Kaesa was considered the victim of the largest ransomware attack on record. The ransomware attack had halted numerous business operations on a global level and put Kaesa executives in a tough position, now with the opportunity to end the attack by paying a record-breaking $70 million in ransom. And Biden's, then moving on to government response, in Biden's recently announced $3.5 trillion infrastructure plan, cybersecurity spending would account for $9.8 billion and would go towards civilian cybersecurity programs across the government. In addition, Biden also signed an executive order that aims to innovate the nation's cybersecurity. Most of the progress that lies within cyber protection has to do with addressing the growing number of attacks coming from Russian-based hacker groups. All the attacks that were previously mentioned were orchestrated by Russian hackers. The Russian-based hacker group REvil was responsible for carrying both the attacks on JBS Foods and Kaesa. These attacks overall have led the Biden administration to express its concerns with the Russian government and has mentioned the possibility of directly handling these Russian-based hackers, given that these ransomware attacks have been declared a threat to national security. So, going in correlation with the rise number of attacks, the increase for protection is driving the cybersecurity market to increase at a rate of 10.9% annually, while also boosting cybersecurity spending to $170 billion by 2022. This increase overall in demand will drive companies to innovate and develop new ways of tackling the sophisticated cyber attacks that have spiked in recent years, thus making the cybersecurity market an attractive investment destination, given that companies will need to continue to invest heavily in both IT and cybersecurity.
Segueing into what's really innovated the space and created an entirely new field of players that are quickly gaining market share, which is cloud-native companies like CrowdStrike, which have really changed the game, similar to the companies that are also on your screen right now. And the reason cloud-native companies are so important, especially in cyber defense, is that they're able to respond faster, especially with human and manual responses just being too slow nowadays. They also allow you to aggregate all operations within the cloud, which also optimizes their AI systems. And then on top of that, you can auto-scale your business as you continue to grow, and then you can send out real-time updates to your clients. As Lorenzo mentioned, we're very excited about some of the innovative players in the space, including Darktrace, SentinelOne, and NortonLifeLock. Darktrace has a self-learning AI that aims to mimic the human immune system and fight off anything foreign, namely attacks. and they focus on network security. And although they're still very young and coming out of the London area, it gives some great exposure to the Europe market, and also has some really great potential to expand just beyond network security. SentinelOne possibly has the best, and in our opinion, the best endpoint security in the entire market. And this is done through a next-gen autonomous XDR system, which stands for Extended Defense Detection and Response. And although they only focus on endpoint security right now, they did just recently go public and have 1.2 billion in their new cash pile to kind of allocate how they would like in order to grow. And then NortonLifeLock, which unlike the others, isn't exactly the most technologically advanced, and especially compared to like a CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, or a Darktrace. They rather focus on consumer cyber defense, and especially through their newest product, the Norton 360 app, which allows their customers to track anything from whether their data is on the dark web to whether their VPN is secure. And then they also are in talks to acquire Avast, which is another European cyber defense company. Rationalizing multiples, obviously a lot of these companies are viewed as being very expensive, namely CrowdStrike at the top, as you see, but we believe that they're going to continue their really strong customer growth that you can see in the bottom right chart, and exceed expectations going forward, given the tailwinds coming off of major recent cyber attacks and the need for a lot of companies to buff up their cybersecurity overall. And we believe this will allow them to drive down multiples, and as well as continue to gain market share. SentinelOne is another company that's really continued to grow, especially in terms of overall customer base. And this is going to really allow them to grow their annually reoccurring revenue, or ARR, and also drive down margins, which has been a really big knock on them, as their gross margins it's about 58%, whereas most of their competitors sit around 80. So, but if you look at historical data, CrowdStrike was at similar levels in about 2018. So we see no issue with SentinelOne being that low at the current moment, as we expect their growth to kind of offset that into the future. And then Darktrace, which sits in the middle of the pack with about 22 times price to sales multiple, really has the potential to not only continue to drive this down, given that they're ending their hiring freeze that they had at the beginning of COVID, and should really be able to ramp up hiring in their sales team and continue to gain market share and get their name out there. But we also believe that they will potentially expand beyond just network security, which would be a really huge catalyst for investors. And then Zscaler and Okta, and you can include another player like Fortinet in there, operate within their own niches, Zscaler with digitalization and Okta within the user verification side of the business. And these have both trade at pretty high multiples, but are really backed by really strong revenue growth in about the high double digits. And then it's not all expensive companies. There's also some really great value to be found within the space. NortonLifeLock trades at the lowest peg of any infrastructure software company at about a 1.5 and a mid-single digits price to sales, and they've had really great margin growth, especially in the last year with their EBITDA operating and profit margins. Palo Alto Networks, similar to other players like CrowdStrike and as we'll mention, Microsoft, offers a complete array of cyber defense products and still trades at a relatively low peg, especially compared to peers of 2.67, and as well as a relatively low price of sales, as it's in the high single digits area, but still single digits, which is very low comparative to players like CrowdStrike, Okta, or Zscaler. And then they still have really strong growth potential. They had 17% top line growth last year. And then Microsoft, which is not a pure play in the space, still has been able to accumulate 400,000 customers between its Azure and Defender products, and has about 10 billion in annual revenues, and it's still growing within the space. And it trades about 2.43 peg, which obviously compared to the rest of the market would be high, but given that it does operate in the software sector, that's still comparatively low or on par with their peers. And then they had 136 billion on their in cash on their balance sheet at the beginning of the year, which opens a lot of opportunities for M&A. Moving into the Tenjin cybersecurity portfolio, we really constructed this not only just based on risk and overall possible returns, but really focusing on who will have the best technology within their own niches and really be able to dominate the space going forward, given these competitive advantages. And so we have a combination of industry leaders as well as niche players. So we have the Microsofts and CrowdStrikes and the NortonLifeLock, who obviously dominates consumer, but we also have some smaller players that we really think have the potential to reach that size with Darktrace and SentinelOne. And then these all really benefit from positive analyst sentiment.